They held a funeral, cried at her grave, and told me to forget. But 13 years later, I heard footsteps above my room, and what I found shattered everything I believed about my family. My name is Elijah. I was 17 when my older sister, Hannah, was declared dead. They said it was a drowning accident. No body. Just a closed casket, and a quick burial. I cried for months. She was my only sibling. The one who used to sneak me candy when our parents were fighting. Who braided my hair when I was too scared to go to school. Who told me I was brave, even when I wasn't. But then she was gone. And everything in the house changed. My mother got quieter. My father drank more. And the third floor of our old Victorian home, the attic, was sealed shut. Nobody goes up there, Dad barked once. Rats, my mom said when I asked about the strange thumping sound some nights. I believed them. Until last month. I'm 29 now. Came back to the house to help sell it after Dad's stroke. Mom had already passed. The house was cold and hollow, but I still heard it. That same sound. Footsteps. Above me. So I waited until midnight, took the old spare key I'd found behind Dad's liquor cabinet, and unlocked the attic door. What I saw will never leave me. A mattress. A small bookshelf. A tray of food. And in the corner, a woman. Pale. Thin. Her hair matted. Her eyes wide. Elijah. My name. From her lips. I almost collapsed. It was Hannah. Alive. Frozen in time. She ran to me. Wrapped her arms around me like she was still 19. I pulled back, shaking. What is this? Why are you here? How? She started crying. They said if I ever left, they'd lock you up too. I didn't speak for a full minute. I couldn't. My sister, the one I had mourned, buried in my heart, cried for in silence, was standing in front of me, alive. She looked older, worn down, but her voice was still the same. Soft. Gentle. Broken. They told me you were dead, I said, barely breathing. She nodded, swallowing hard. They told me the same about you. I stared at her, confused. But, why? Why would they lock you in here? What could you have possibly done? She turned away, sat slowly on the mattress, and whispered, I got pregnant. Everything inside me froze. I was 19. It was just before I was about to leave for college. I didn't want to hide it. I told Mom and Dad. I thought they'd be upset, but I didn't expect what came next. She looked me in the eyes then, and I saw it. Fear. Still fresh. Still bleeding. They said I had disgraced the family. That no child of theirs would bring shame into this house. I felt something sharp stab through my chest. They dragged me up here that same night, she continued. Told me no one would believe me if I tried to run. Said I was sick, that I needed help, that they'd handle it quietly, and no one would ever have to know. Then one day, they came back and said you had been told I was dead. That you cried at my funeral. I nearly fell to my knees. For 13 years, I whispered. You were just up here? She nodded, wiping tears away. They brought me food, clothes, books. They made me swear not to make noise. I used to tap on the floor sometimes, hoping maybe you'd hear. I had. But I was a scared teenager, and I trusted my parents. Until now. I stood, fists clenched. I wanted to burn the whole house to the ground. The lies, the control, the cruelty, all hidden behind quiet dinners and polite conversations. And they let me believe she was dead. They made me carry that grief for 13 years. But the baby? I asked, barely able to say the words. What happened to your baby? She looked away again, her voice trembling. That's where it gets worse. I sat beside her, already bracing for whatever horror she was about to say. They took him, she whispered. Said he died at birth. But I remember hearing him cry. I remember holding him. They took him from my arms while I was still bleeding. I couldn't breathe. And then I never saw him again. The room felt colder after those words. I could still hear her voice in my head. I remember holding him, and the way it cracked like glass when she said they took him. Do you think... I began, but I couldn't finish the question. My throat tightened. She nodded. I've wondered every day for 13 years if my son is out there. If he's alive. If he even knows I exist. I was shaking. Why would they do this, Hannah? What kind of parents? She cut in softly. They weren't just protecting the family name. They were protecting a lie. My eyes locked on hers. And that's when she pulled out something I never expected. A small notebook, frayed at the edges. She slid it toward me. I found this 2 years ago, hidden under one of the floorboards. It's Dad's. He used to come up here sometimes, late at night. I pretended to be asleep, but I saw him reading it. I opened it, my fingers trembling. Inside were scribbled pages. Medical appointments, dates, money transfers, names. One name stopped my heart cold. Liam. Wait, this can't be. Hannah looked at me carefully. You knew him. Liam was my best friend, my roommate in college. He lived with us for years. He was practically part of the family. No, she said quietly. He was part of the family. Because he's my son. Everything blurred. He lived with us, I repeated, trying to process it. And no one told me? She swallowed hard. They adopted him in secret. Told the world he was an orphan. Sent him to boarding school when he was old enough. Kept him just close enough for control, just far enough to keep us apart. They gave him a new birthday. A new name. I only found out when I saw his real birth certificate hidden in this notebook. I felt like I was going to be sick. The boy I'd shared my childhood with. The boy I thought of as a brother. Was actually her son. My nephew. They kept him in our house. Under our roof. And never told either of you. She nodded, eyes full of grief. They buried him in plain sight. Just like they buried me in this room. I stood up. I couldn't sit anymore. I paced. My hands were shaking. Where is he now? I don't know. I haven't seen him since before you left for university. I pulled out my phone. My hands fumbled with the screen. I hadn't spoken to Liam in over a year. He stopped replying to texts after our last awkward argument. I didn't even remember what it was about anymore. But I remembered he changed. Became quiet. Cold. Like something inside him had broken. Then I remembered something else. A photo. Taken years ago. Me, Liam, and Dad standing in front of the house. In the photo, Dad's hand was on Liam's shoulder. Not mine. I had laughed about it back then. Thought nothing of it. Now it made my stomach churn. Come with me, I told Hannah. We're getting out of here. We're going to find him. She looked scared. What if he doesn't believe me? I paused. Then we show him the notebook. The birth certificate. The room. Everything. We left the house just before sunset, Hannah clutching the notebook like it held her breath. I drove in silence, heart thudding. I couldn't stop thinking about Liam, the jokes we shared, the late-night talks, the way he always asked about my mom, and how our father always found a way to steer the conversation away. I had no current address, but I remembered his last job. A tech company downtown. We went there. Asked questions. Got directed to a co-working space he now rented. When we finally stepped into that building, and I saw him, my breath caught. Liam looked up from his desk. At first, a smile tugged at his lips, the old familiarity still lingering. But then he saw Hannah, and everything stopped. He stood slowly. His eyes scanned her face like he was remembering something from a dream. Or a nightmare. I know you, he whispered. She nodded. Barely breathing. I used to sing to you through a wall. You were just a baby, but you stopped crying when you heard my voice. Liam stumbled back a step, his face draining of color. I remember that, he said. I thought it was a dream. She took a small step forward. It wasn't. They told me you died. They told me to forget. But I never did. He turned to me, shaking. What is this? I handed him the notebook. He flipped through it, then stopped, stared. His shoulders slumped like the air had left his body. "This is my birth name," he said. This is her name. "She's your mother," I said. He didn't speak, just sank into the nearest chair. We stayed there for hours, unpacking lies, showing evidence, letting silence fall when the grief became too heavy. At one point, Liam broke. He cried like a child, and Hannah just held him, whispered his name like she'd been waiting her whole life to say it out loud. "I knew something was wrong," he sobbed. "I always felt out of place. But I thought it was just me. I thought I was broken." "You weren't," she said softly. "You were stolen." A few days later, we returned to the house. Together. It was time for answers. Dad was in his study, where all the secrets had always lived. When he saw Liam and Hannah step in behind me, he stood slowly. The look in his eyes wasn't surprise. It was fear. "I kept the family together," he said before we could speak. "Do you understand what I risked?" "No," I said. "But you're about to explain it." "I saved you from disgrace," he snapped at Hannah. "You were 16. You would have ruined your life." "You ruined his," she said, pointing to Liam. "And mine." Liam didn't speak, just pulled out the notebook, threw it on the desk. My father looked down. For once, he had no words. Hannah stepped forward. Her voice didn't shake. "You took my child. You made me a ghost in my own life. And for what? So you could play hero to the child you stole." "You were going to leave," he said coldly. "You weren't fit to be a mother." "No," I said sharply. "She just wasn't your idea of a mother." He stepped back. "We're done here." And we walked out. Liam moved in with me for a while. Hannah got her own place nearby. They took it slow. Healing is a quiet thing, after all. He didn't call them again. Neither did I. But sometimes, I caught him sitting on the couch, reading that notebook like it was the only piece of his past that made sense. One day, he said to me, "Do you think it's possible to build a new family from what's left of the truth?" And I said, "I think that's the only kind that lasts." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe for more powerful stories.